They found her body in a shallow grave near the old quarry, still wearing the red gown she was so proud of. The same gown she wore when she laughed at her boyfriend for being too broke to take her out for Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day was all anyone talked about that month. In our small town, the holiday was more than just flowers and chocolates, it was a show of status. Women paraded gifts they received, from handbags to phones, as proof of their market value. Men, on the other hand, either went broke trying to impress their girlfriends or avoided the holiday entirely, knowing they couldn't compete with the flashy boys who came into town in their big cars. Valentine's Day was the most anticipated event of the year in our small town. From the beginning of February, you could feel the energy shift. The markets buzzed with women shopping for the perfect red dresses and men haggling for perfumes, chocolates, or anything that could make their girlfriend smile, or, more importantly, brag. It wasn't just a day of love, it was a day of judgment. Everyone watched to see who got what, and the size of the gift often determined the size of your respect. Social media was flooded with posts of wrapped presents, flower bouquets, and candlelit dinners. If you didn't post something, people assumed you were either single or dating someone who couldn't afford to celebrate you properly. Women whispered excitedly in salons about what they expected. "If he doesn't get me an iPhone, I'm done with him," one girl said as her nails were painted bright red. "This is 2025, not 2005. I can't manage a man who doesn't know how to treat me right." The men weren't left out either, but for them, it was a stressful time. Those with money reveled in the competition, each one trying to outdo the other. "I'm taking her to Abuja for the weekend," one guy bragged to his friends, slapping wads of cash on the table at a bar. What's the point of love if you can spend? For the less wealthy men, Valentine's Day was a nightmare. They dreaded the pressure to perform, the expectation to deliver something grand. Many quietly avoided their girlfriends in the days leading up to the holiday, knowing they couldn't meet the sky-high standards. Some even broke up temporarily, using flimsy excuses to dodge the holiday entirely. But the real focus of the day was on the big boys, the men who rolled into town in flashy cars, wearing designer clothes and gold watches that glinted in the sun. They were the ones who turned heads and set hearts racing. Every woman wanted to be seen with them, even if it was just for one night. Valentine's Day wasn't just a celebration of love, it was a stage, and everyone wanted to be the star. The gifts, the dates, the social media posts, it was all a performance, a way of proving your worth to the world. But beneath the glitz and glamour, there was an unspoken truth: not all love stories ended well, and sometimes, the price of chasing the perfect Valentine was far too high. But this year, it was different. A man named Obi showed up in town, and everything turned upside down. Obi wasn't like the usual flashy men who came around during festive periods. He didn't talk much, but his presence spoke volumes. He arrived in a sleek black Mercedes-Benz that shone so brightly you could see your reflection in it. His white Edborda was always spotless, ironed to perfection, and embroidered with intricate patterns that hinted at serious money. Gold chains peeked from beneath his collar, and his wristwatch, encrusted with diamonds, caught the sunlight at every turn. He didn't need to announce himself, his car did that for him. The engine's roar as he pulled up at the market square made heads turn. When he stepped out, the air seemed to shift. Women whispered to one another, adjusting their hair and pretending not to notice him. Men exchanged looks, silently acknowledging they couldn't compete. Obi was charming but reserved. He didn't flaunt his wealth in loud ways, which made him even more intriguing. He would buy small things at the market, handing out crisp naira notes without waiting for change. Sometimes, he'd stop at the roadside food stalls and casually pay for everyone eating there, earning cheers and applause. But what set Obi apart wasn't just his wealth, it was the way he looked at women. His gaze lingered just long enough to make you feel special but never too long to seem disrespectful. He had a way of making women feel seen, desired, and appreciated. When he spoke, his voice was deep and smooth, each word carefully chosen. In just a week, Obi became the talk of the town. No one knew where he came from or why he was there, but that only added to his mystery. Some said he was a businessman from Lagos, while others speculated he had political connections. A few skeptical men whispered about how he made his money, but their voices were drowned out by the excitement. Women, especially those who prided themselves on being a high value, saw Obi as a golden opportunity. Tonia was one of them. She had been eyeing Obi since the day he arrived, and when he finally approached her at the market, she acted coy, pretending not to be too interested.
Good afternoon, my dear.
Obi said, his voice warm and inviting.
What's your name?
Tonia. She replied, smiling shyly but making sure her dimples showed.
You have a beautiful smile, Tonia. I hope you'll let me take you out for Valentine's Day. A woman like you deserves to be spoiled.
Tonia felt her heart race. The richest man in town was asking her out. It was like a dream come true. From that moment on, Tonia was glued to Obi's side. He took her shopping, bought her a designer handbag, and even hinted at flying her to Lagos someday. She was convinced she'd found her Prince Charming, the man who would give her the life she always dreamed of. But not everyone was enchanted by Obi. Some of the older women in the market muttered under their breath about him. Tonia didn't listen. She was too busy living the life she thought she deserved. Little did she know, Obi's charm wasn't just hiding secrets, it was hiding something far more dangerous. As Valentine's Day drew closer, the buzz in town grew louder. Everyone wanted to be chosen. Young women who usually couldn't be bothered to dress up suddenly started wearing their best clothes. Social media was flooded with posts about love, money, and how this Valentine would be different. I was at the market one day when I overheard two women arguing. One of them, Tonia, was laughing at her friend Amaka for staying with her poor boyfriend, Jide. Why are you still with him? Tonia sneered. Jide can barely afford to buy you chicken, and you're here talking about Valentine. Look at me, I'm not wasting my time with any broke man. This year, I'm going for someone who knows how to take care of a woman. Money isn't everything, Amaka muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Later that week, I saw Tonia in Obi's car, her face lit up like she'd won the lottery. She was showing off on Snapchat, tagging her posts with captions like, "Soft life loading" and "At this Valentine go choke." It wasn't just Tonia. By the second week of February, Obi had become the town's most eligible bachelor. Women flocked to him, ditching their boyfriends without a second thought. "He's not even that handsome," my friend Honor whispered one evening as we watched Obi pick up yet another girl from a popular bar. "It's not about looks," I replied. "It's the money." But something about Obi didn't sit right with me. He always wore sunglasses, even at night, and his smile never reached his eyes. I couldn't help but wonder why a man like him would come to our small town instead of finding a woman in Lagos or Abuja. In the bars and salons, his name was on everyone's lips. "Did you see Obi today? He looks like he stepped out of a Nollywood movie," one woman gushed. "I heard he's buying new dresses for women he likes," another added, her voice tinged with jealousy. Some women went as far as cancelling dates with their longtime boyfriends, telling them they needed space just in case Obi noticed them. It wasn't hard to understand why. Obi was everything many of them had dreamed of: handsome, wealthy, and attentive. He gave off the air of a man who could change a woman's life overnight. And he played the role well, always offering a kind word, a compliment, or a gift to the women who sought his attention. His car alone was enough to send hearts fluttering, especially when he slowed down near a group of women, rolled down the tinted window, and offered someone a ride. But for the men in town, Obi's presence was a disaster. Arguments became a daily occurrence. Boyfriends found themselves abandoned by women they had been saving up for, all because of the promise of something bigger and shinier. Why should I settle for your second-hand love when Obi is out there treating women like queens? One woman said to her boyfriend in a crowded restaurant, leaving him humiliated as she stormed out. Some of the men tried to fight back, spreading rumors about Obi. He's too good to be true, they said. Do you think a man like that doesn't already have a wife in Lagos? But their voices were drowned out by the excitement. To the woman, it didn't matter who Obi was or where he came from, what mattered was that he was here, now, and ready to spend. Even those who didn't openly chase him began to dream of being noticed. They wore their best clothes whenever they stepped out, applied their makeup with extra care, and walked with more confidence, hoping he'd look their way. Tailors in town couldn't keep up with the demand for red dresses, as every woman wanted to look perfect for Valentine's Day, just in case Obi invited her to celebrate with him. By mid-February, the frenzy reached its peak. Obi had a way of keeping everyone guessing. He didn't openly commit to anyone, leaving the women in a silent competition for his attention. Each one wanted to be the one he chose, the one who would win the ultimate prize of being his Valentine. What no one realized was that Obi's attention came at a cost, one far greater than anyone could imagine. Tonia's background wasn't as glamorous as she made it seem. Growing up in a small, crumbling neighborhood on the outskirts of town, she had always known what it felt like to struggle. Her parents, hardworking but poor, scraped by, trying to provide for her and her two younger brothers. Their house was a modest, run-down structure, and she often had to wear hand-me-down clothes from her cousins, which never fit quite right. It wasn't the life she had envisioned for herself, and it drove her to look beyond her circumstances. From a young age, Tonia realized that beauty could be a ticket out of poverty. She was tall and striking, with long hair that shimmered like the dark night sky and a smile that made people notice her. She worked hard to maintain that beauty, spending hours in front of the mirror, perfecting her look, learning the best way to carry herself. She knew that if she was going to escape the life her parents had given her, she had to rely on what she had. Her first boyfriend, Chuka, was a kind-hearted guy who worked in a small shop. He didn't have much but gave her his all. He'd save up for weeks just to buy her a simple gift, a pair of earrings or a small bracelet, things that she cherished more than anything because he had worked so hard for them. But no matter how kind and loving Chuka was, he didn't have the resources to give her the kind of life she dreamed of, the one filled with luxury, travel, and status. Tonia started to see her relationship with Chuka as an anchor holding her back, not because he didn't love her, but because he couldn't give her the life she had envisioned for herself. Whenever she saw the other girls in town with their flashy boyfriends, draped in the finest clothes and driving the latest cars, she felt a pang of jealousy. Chuka could never give her that, no matter how much he tried to show her he cared. So, when she met Ahmed, a well-dressed guy who was a bit older and had a reputation for throwing lavish parties, she didn't think twice. Ahmed had money. He had everything Chuka didn't, an expensive car, designer suits, and the kind of confidence that came with knowing he could have any woman he wanted. Tonia told herself she wasn't leaving Chuka for Ahmed's money, but deep down, she knew that was exactly what she was doing. She broke up with Chuka one rainy afternoon, offering him some weak excuse about needing space to figure herself out. Chuka was heartbroken, but Tonia felt relief. She'd found someone who could give her what she truly wanted, someone who could elevate her from the poverty-stricken life she'd always known. She convinced herself it was for the best. But Ahmed wasn't her final escape, either. When he started to show signs of possessiveness, Tonia quickly moved on to Samuel, another wealthy man who had more power and influence than anyone in town. And when Samuel failed to keep up with her growing desires, she dropped him too, leaving him in the dust without a second thought. By the time Obi came into town, Tonia had already perfected the art of leaving poor men behind. She didn't do it out of malice, it was simply a survival instinct. She had learned that money meant security, status, and power. With Obi, it wasn't just about the gifts or the lavish dates, it was about something much bigger. He could offer her the life she had always dreamed of, the life that would finally make her feel like she belonged, like she was someone special. But in her quest for wealth and status, Tonia had never stopped to consider the true cost of her choices. And when Obi came into her life, she couldn't see that his attentions were not as innocent as they seemed. All she could see was an opportunity to climb higher, no matter who she had to leave behind. By February 13th, the town was buzzing. Obi was throwing a Valentine's party at a rented villa on the outskirts of town, and only special guests were invited. Tonia made sure everyone knew she was going. The day of the party, she came to my house to show off her outfit, a red sequin gown that clung to her curves. She asked, twirling. "It's beautiful," I said, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "You should come with me," she said. I laughed. "I'm not his type." "Suit yourself," she said, shrugging. "But don't be jealous when I come back with an iPhone and some cash." The next morning, the town was in chaos. Tonia hadn't come home. Neither had two other women who had gone to the party. Their families were frantic, but Obi was nowhere to be found. His rented villa was empty, the furniture gone, the place scrubbed clean. It wasn't until 2 days later that they found her body. Tonia, along with the others, had been killed and left near the quarry. The police said it was a ritual killing, and Obi was the prime suspect. Amaka was the one who broke down the hardest. She couldn't stop crying, blaming herself for not stopping Tonia. "Maybe if I had convinced her to stay with her man, this wouldn't have happened," she said. "I didn't know what to say. How could you tell someone that their friend's life was worth more than flashy cars and expensive gifts when the whole town seemed to believe otherwise?" The town hasn't been the same since Obi came. Every Valentine's Day, people talk about Tonia and the others, about how they traded the safety of love for the illusion of wealth, and how it all ended in tragedy. Obi wasn't just a man of wealth, he was a man with a carefully curated persona. He had learned the art of seduction, not just through his charm but through the power his money gave him. Women who were once content with their simple lives now began to look at their boyfriends with disdain, wishing for something bigger, something better. Obi knew exactly how to make them feel like they deserved more than they had, how to make them crave a life they could never have on their own. He wasn't from the town. No one really knew where he came from, but his reputation preceded him. There were rumors that he was connected to powerful figures in the city, that his wealth wasn't entirely clean, and that his charm was just another tool in his arsenal to get what he wanted. But no one cared about that, they only saw the glimmering facade of success. They saw Obi's smooth talk and the promises of a life free from the struggles they'd known. For Tonia and the others, Obi was the ultimate prize, the embodiment of everything they thought they needed to feel validated. When he turned his attention to them, it felt like a dream come true, the kind of fairy tale love story that everyone longed for but few ever got to experience. But Obi's love was not a love that lasted. It was fleeting, like the perfume of roses that lingered for only a moment before it faded away. As the days passed, the women who'd once fought for his attention began to lose themselves. They let go of the people who had loved them for who they were, people like Chuka, who had given them all of their hearts, their time, and their attention, only to be replaced by the emptiness of a man who had nothing real to offer. They didn't realize it then, but Obi's affection was conditional, and he had no intentions of keeping anyone around for long. For him, they were just another part of the show, a passing interest to satisfy his ego and fuel his desires. When Tonia disappeared, and the whispers about her body found in the shallow grave spread like wildfire, the town's idealization of Obi crumbled. At first, no one could believe it. Obi, the man who had seemed like the answer to all their problems, was the one responsible for the tragedy. Tonia's red gown, so proud, so vibrant, a symbol of her new life, was found still clinging to her body, a stark contrast to the dirt and decay around her. Obi was a man of power, yes, but also a man of secrets no one ever saw coming. The townsfolk began to ask themselves if they had all been blind to the signs, if they had ignored the whispers in the dark about who he really was. In hindsight, they could see it all now, the way he moved through the town like a shadow, gathering up the women who were most vulnerable to his charm, offering them a glimpse of a better life, only to take it all away when he was done. It was later found that Obi went from city to city every Valentine, ending the lives of women in these cities and disappearing. He was using them for money rituals, and he went for the most beautiful women. He used the same format in 7 cities, but to date no one knows his whereabouts. Now, every Valentine's Day, when the roses are sold at the corner shop and the town's streets are filled with people talking about love and gifts, they remember Tonia and the others. The town hasn't been the same since. When he came to our town, 12 women unfortunately went missing, and we found out them all in the old quarry. The women who once celebrated their newfound wealth and status now live with the burden of regret, haunted by the choices they made, the men they left behind, and the love they lost. They now understand, too late, that sometimes the pursuit of wealth can lead you to places you never wanted to go. What remained was the emptiness, the aftermath, and a haunting reminder that sometimes the price of love, when it's driven by money, can cost you everything. So, if you're watching this and thinking about ditching your boyfriend for the next Obi who comes into town with promises of a better life, remember this: not all that glitters is gold. Sometimes, it's just the bait. Jesus is the one who is our one true love, and we should remember that God's love is greater than any other love we crave for.